At least better than that last round, which was an absolute slaughter.
And I believe this match is Landstill versus Elves.
Yes, this should be a matchup that has much more interaction. We'll probably get past, I don't know, 10 turns total in the match. So that should be exciting.
Phil,
the Elves versus TNT matchup is abysmal. That's a good question. I am never one to count Elves out because of the Wirewood Symbiote and Elvish Visionary engine being able to grind through a lot of things very successfully. So even though Jody has a bunch of removal like Engineered Explosives and Supreme Verdict, at the end of the day, it may not be enough. But I think Jody Keith does have the potential to get a lot of easy wins.
So for me, I think that Julian is slightly favored because Landstill is not Miracles. There's no Terminus. There's no Instant Speed Wrath of God. And I feel like you said, the engine of Wirewood Symbiote and Elvish Visionary is huge. So I think that puts him at a slight favor, but not by a whole lot. And by the looks of it, we see one of the key cards that you mentioned, Engineered Explosives.
So EE on 1 in the early game, while Elves is still kind of vomiting out its initial threats, can be very, very devastating. An early 3-for-1 can make it so that a card like Standstill actually is a magic card instead of just Force of Will fodder.
So I think we're going to see Jody keep his 7. However, I would expect Julian to mulligan.
I don't know. He might be able to keep that and still win somehow. He's real good. But yeah, I expect the mulligan here. It's pretty clear.
Is Julian's logo a central perk from Friends?
We have gotten confirmation that is yes.
It's pretty awesome.
So I think one of Julian's best tools will, other than the Elvish Visionary engine, which is going to be nuts because these games are going to go long. I think the early Natural Order kill is very feasible, right? There's 4 Force of Wills to stop it and 2 Spell Pierces. But otherwise, that is a go.
So I think we're waiting on a couple of things right now, but we should be starting momentarily. And it looks like Julian is mulliganed. What do you think about this 6, Phil?
This has the potential to go somewhere pretty broken. It has Glimpse and Quirion Ranger to untap Dryad Arbor to produce extra mana. So it's definitely a keep. He's probably going to need to draw something else other than a land to really make this work.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did he scry a Quirion Ranger to the top?
I did not see that. I cannot confirm.
On the bottom.
Scry to the bottom.
So if I'm in Jody's seat, I think here what I want to do is I want to play EE on 1, backed by Standstill. What do you think about that as a line, Phil?
I quite like that.
I think that puts you far enough ahead, especially when Julian is down on cards.
Yeah, on a mull to 6, I think that's a very reasonable play. I guess there's some fear of... No, I guess even just playing Elvish Visionary on 2 so you don't get every card isn't that big of a deal because you can just Swords that at some point. But I can understand wanting to just pass with the mana up and be super safe.
Using Cardboard.live, brought to you by Wilson Hunter, you can see that Julian has, I believe, 2 copies of Dryad Arbor. Yes, 2. They are not underneath the lands. They're underneath the creatures. So those, pose an interesting threat against Landstill as, it's threats underneath Standstill. Do you think that will come up at all?
If things don't go Julian's way and then the games end up going very long, then yes, I think that's 100% something that's going to happen. So we're seeing a glimpse attempt here. This probably isn't a combo glimpse turn. This is probably rather a value glimpse, kind of restock the hand a little bit.
I would agree with that. So, obviously, Elves is one of the decks that was hurt by the banning of Deathrite Shaman. Do you like how the deck has moved since then? Like the slots that are filling it. So, like typically, there's like a couple Llanowar Elves, another tutor target for Natural Order, Green Sun Zenith, and then there's like one flex spot.
So I definitely like the nature of the list right now better than what some people were initially doing. I think there was a lot of jank that was being tried in the main deck of Elves, things like Priest of Titania that maybe really weren't necessary to like the main goals of the deck. And I feel like the current Elves list is a little bit leaner and more refined. Julian obviously knows what he's talking about, but I've really liked some of the other Natural Order sideboard targets that I've seen. I've been on the wrong side of Progenitus a couple of times recently, as well as the Worm with all the 7s on it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the 7 Worm. Yeah, I forget what it's called. We'll come back to that in a second. So what's interesting is I would have kept Jody's Ponder because I wanted the Forcible just so I don't lose to Natural Order. However, he shuffled the Ponder and drew a Forcible anyway. It was almost perfect.
So it's kind of an interesting position here because he has this EE, but it's a single target removal spell currently. Because if he goes and cracks it on 1, Wirewood bounces the Heritage Druid, and he has only successfully gotten rid of 1 card.
I think this game is shaping up pretty well for Julian, despite how miserable his draw's been.
Oh yeah, unless we see something like a Supreme Verdict here to go and like get rid of these Dryad Arbors, Jody might just get pecked to death before he can get anything going. Like there's no cantrips in the hand currently. He can't deploy that Standstill. It's just Force of Will fodder.
So going back to the cards that have replaced Deathrite Shaman, I'm a really big fan of Shaman of the Pact, and it doesn't see any play. So like you mentioned, that 7 mana, 7/7 Worm, where your life total is 7 and everything is 7 for the rest of the game. Shaman of the Pact breaks that in the mirror. But more importantly, it like beats effects like Glacial Chasm against lands. It allows for combo kills with Wirebird Symbiote. Like I think it's a very versatile card that can win the game out of nowhere. And it's also like a pseudo Natural Order target that's actually castable. Like I'm shocked that more lists aren't playing it, and I'm a really big fan of the card.
I've messed around. Ooh boy. I don't think Julian goes for the Natural Order, but it's really nice to have that.
Chad has brought it up for us. It is Elder Scale Worm.
Thank you, Chad. You're the real MVP here. Great commentary, Chad. Yeah, Elder Scale Worm also makes the Elves Mirror really miserable, because if you both have one, you just stare at each other until you have no cards left in library, and then you just start casting Green Sun Zeniths so that you don't deck yourself, and no one wins.
Shaman of the Pack.
Shaman of the Pack is a mirror breaker.
Ooh, I think we're about to see a Cycle Decree of Justice here. So here's the question. Do you actually block a Heritage Druid, or do you take down an Arbor?
So if Julian gets one more elf, the Heritage Druids get a lot more value than they have currently. Although it's probably pretty clear that mana is not his bottleneck. If Jody has another main deck EE, which he does, he might be better off like blocking a Dryad Arbor to give himself like a shot at a better rip.
Okay, and we'll see here that Jody does block the Heritage Druid, which you initially suspected. If I was Julian, I think I would start jamming Natural Orders personally. Like, I think at some point you have to check him for counter spells.
I think like Jody has 5 cards in hand. The beatdown plan is working. Like he could probably beat down for 2 more turns and just get there.
So I actually think I would have liked attacking first here, because I don't like this.
This is going to be rough.
Because it would have been a 2-turn clock regardless. I guess like that way you lose to Supreme Verdict, but I think I just like hedging my bets of, like not losing to counter spells.
Like my read on Jody's hand, if he was just getting beat down by a bunch of 1/1 idiots, was that he doesn't have removal. So if he doesn't have removal, what is it? Lands and counterspells? Jace?
Yeah. I don't have anything to say about that. But we will see Humility come down here, which will turn Giant Arbor into a 1/1. So that should be pretty interesting. It looks like Jody's second-guessing himself a little bit.
Deciding whether or not he wants to fight regular Dryad Arbor or more different Dryad Arbor. It's a tough choice.
I believe that Giant Arbor will no longer tap for green. So it is one less mana.
That is correct. I don't want to sit there and think about the layers while trying to focus on other things, but I believe that's correct. They lose all abilities, and no, I'm not thinking about it.
So while I'm on camera, I would like to shout out to Match3 Parted Hair, mainly Anurag Das, for being one of the sponsors of Legacy Premier League. Great guy, great hair.
All right, if we're going to shout out to random sponsors, how about Cardboarder?
They're pretty great.
Sweet water bottle. They sponsor my stream. They sponsor the Legacy Premier League. Really, they've been pretty good to our community.
So I only recently started using Card Hoarder, and I couldn't believe how much better it is than any other place that you could sell tickets online. Like, I don't think I'm ever going anywhere else.
I bought my my online copy of D&T through them. I was very pleased with the customer service, and like I use them for pretty much all of my stuff. Not because they sponsor me, but because I like their service.
So about a month ago, I had about 400 chests that I've been saving up because the ticket exchange rate wasn't great, and it finally went up with the release of the new set. Mm-hmm. And I found out that Card Hoarder was buying at 97 cents for tickets. So I sold to them, no fees when they deposit the money into your bank account. It was just an incredible experience. The payment was quick. I can't say great. I'm like stumbling now how great it was.
Yeah. They give me a $500 loan account so I can play different decks for my stream, which I really appreciate. And the loan process is so smooth, and their card delivery process is the same way for.
Wow, we're seeing an attack here with the Mishra's Factory.
Wow. Oh well.
Okay.
I guess with a second factory and a Swords to Plowshares, things are pretty safe.
Our chat is !punt. I think we might have missed something.
We were too busy talking about how amazing Card Hoarder is. All right, trying to figure out what we missed.
This Misty Rainforest cannot get another Giant Arbor. So where do you think Julian breaks the standstill? Like, what does he need to draw in order for it to break? Because I don't like the waiting game when your opponent's at 2. I think I'd rather just jam everything.
So if he draws, like, a natural order and can do, like, bait spell into natural order, I think that's a really good position.
Ooze is a pretty good draw.
Yeah, there are enough creatures in the graveyard where that's a real threat.
What I like about it is it also shuts off Snapcaster Mage, which I believe that Jody still has 4 of. It doesn't look like there's any in his graveyard. So yeah, Jody still has 4 copies of Snapcaster Mage in his deck.
He has 3 in his list, I believe.
Oh, my bad.
But still, 3 is a lot of Snapcaster Mages.
You are correct. Using Cardboard.live, you can see that.
So, chat mentioned it, but Pendelhaven would be an okay draw, I guess. So, like, it doesn't actually get through Factory, though.
Yeah, Factory becomes a 3/3 when it blocks, because you block and then you tap it to give itself +1/+1. So it would actually kill the Giant Arbor. And now we see Julian falling down to 7.
The life totals really swung back quickly, even though, like, Jody's just attacking with a 2/2 every turn. Like, Julian has no defense. And this is probably the last turn he could possibly wait, because if he waits another turn beyond this, like just like end of turn Snapcaster Mage as just like Ambush Viper starts to present a real lethal threat.
So how about those 3 cards off of Standstill for Jody? Like, those are almost perfect, in my opinion.
Oh man, the Supreme Verdict is gross. He could just like let a whole bunch of stuff resolve here and do that.
So Chad has mentioned that there was actually a Snapcaster exiled the Forcible earlier, so there are 2 copies left.
2, still a lot of Snapcasters. Maybe. So we're seeing a long pause here thinking about this Scavenging Ooze. I don't really know that this is a moment where you need to blink first and actually do anything about that.
I would agree. So you have the classic Snapcaster, don't do anything because it doesn't work. But I liked your previous line of just letting your opponent do everything and then verdicting them. And by the looks of it, Jody even has enough mana where he can verdict and then attack for 4, putting Julian on his heels.
So I wouldn't counterspell that out of fear of natural order. But there is like some respect to be given to like that opportunity to just like Swords to Plowshares the Visionary so it doesn't just get bounced for later value. Because like even at that point, if you still intend on verdicting, it's still going to be like a 3-for-1 or a 4-for-1. So denying that card draw may be worth it.
I could see that, but from Jody's standpoint, do you think he's far enough ahead where he'd rather save it for a natural order?
Oh, I mean, the Swords to Plowshares is probably fine for the Visionary. The Counterspell is probably reserved for exactly the card Natural Order or maybe Glimpse of Nature.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood you.
Yeah, so I was suggesting in response to Wirewood Symbiote, Swords to Plowshares, the Elvish Visionary that's on the battlefield. You know, not knowing that he has a second Elvish Visionary in hand, of course.
So I'm just curious, do you know the interaction between Humility and Mishra's Factory?
I believe the way that works is Mishra's Factory is still going to end up being a 2/2, although it won't have any abilities once animated.
Agreed. That's what my understanding of it was. I just wanted to make sure. I believe that you're a level 2 judge.
I am. I'm very inactive these days. About a year or so back, the local Star City Games shop changed their policies, and now their store employees are also judges, and they run their local events. So I don't really have a local game store to judge at anymore. So it's been like 6 months since I've judged anything.
Fair enough. So we're in the middle of resolving this brainstorm. I do agree that Flooded Strain is the most obvious card to put back here because you already have a Misty Rainforest in play. I think the other card I'd personally put back is Humility. I don't think it's going to do anything in like this current point in the game, and I think I'd rather have an extra land.
So
looks like there might be some cards off screen that we're not seeing though.
Yeah, that's what I'm unsure about. It looks kind of like we have an island and then some blue cantrip up in the corner, maybe a ponder. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, so I like getting rid of the land. And
see, I would rather have a basic island than a Humility, because then you could verdict. I guess he drew it, so it doesn't matter.
So Ooze is going to get a little bit of value on the way out the door, and probably stabilize his life total a little bit. The fear of just factory beatdown is probably greater than just randomly removing some targets from the graveyard for Snapcaster reasons.
So we're not seeing the play that I liked here, which was leaving your factories untapped and then swinging in for 4. So I think with that, you play the island, and then you cast Standstill, and you hold open Counterspell, which means that you can't die to a creature into natural order off the top.
I think that's got to be the direction that we're going with the way the mana's been tapped.
I believe that there's 2 natural orders left. Earlier, Julian used 2, so At 32 cards,
He's only playing 3 natural orders in his main deck, so he actually only has 1 remaining.
I think I like the line of attacking for 4 then a little bit more, but I understand the reason of playing it safe. I guess there's almost no reason to attack for 4. If like you're at this point like guaranteed to win, just like take your time. I believe that's even the flavor text on Standstill.
Well then, the flavorful play makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, like, if Julian has like another Wirewood symbiote and he can just start like regrinding with the Elvish Visionary, there is some fear there. Oh, this is not something I necessarily expected. It's just the slamming the humility. So I guess I can understand this as like now Julian will just be producing 1/1s and natural order really doesn't do anything.
Okay. I'm done with this line. Reclamation Sage is a 3-mana 1/1.
Well, he can vomit a lot of 1/1s.
So something interesting to point out here is that Julian can dump out a bunch of 1/1s. Jody's at 1 life, and he just took off his ability to Snapcaster Mage into Supreme Verdict. Oh, the Verdict is gone. No, it's still there. So he might actually just die if Julian puts in 5 Elves. So, in theory, Jody could play Jace, and then bounce a creature, have 2 factories, and a swords. I don't know if he has enough mana for the Snapcaster at that point.
Yeah, if Julian just goes all in here and says, all right, make him have it, there is a chance he could lose.
I guess Jody would have the... I really wish Julian would have won an all-in there. I think that was his best chance of winning. But the standstill draws could have also changed that.
At the same time, if Julian waits and draws a glimpse and the glimpse resolves... Oh, no, that doesn't matter because the haste isn't an option anymore. He can't just win the game on the spot.
Yeah, he's also at 3 life now. What was I going to say? We do know that Jody still has 1 engineered explosives in his deck, so theoretically that could have been a blowout card, but I think last turn was still his best shot of winning.
I agree with that. At what point do we see Counterspell on a 1/1?
I don't know if we will. I think that Jody is wise enough to just save it for something that matters. And I am wrong. It happens a lot.
So, like, what would matter at this point that Julian could cast? The 1/1 might just be worth the counterspell.
You're probably right. Natural order for a 1/1 doesn't matter. Green Sun Zenith for a 1/1 doesn't matter. I guess the best thing it can do is trade for a 1/1.
Yeah, and if Julian had the glimpse, that would have been cast much earlier in the turn, unquestionably.
I like one of the comments from chat. Nothing matters.
I get that comment a lot when I'm playing Brightling against a fair deck. Just my opponents rage in the chat, and they're like, nothing I do matters. This card's dumb. Been fun.
I've been a victim of Brightling. Not too proud. It was wearing a batter skull, which made it extra unfun.
Yeah, Brightling does some very silly... Oh, the whole gang's coming to play.
I don't know if I like this. Because
this
next
is
turn...
a 3-for-1.
I think I would have taken my chances with the Swain next turn. Because I feel like that's a line that plays to win rather than playing to lose. Or playing to not die.
Yeah, and now we're just going to see a Fate Seal here, make sure then everything's fine.
I think that Jody has played this game fairly well.
I agree. And the humility decision that both of us kind of scoffed at a little bit might have ended up being very good.
So someone in the chat just asked why the players have so much time on their clocks. For Legacy Premier League, I believe each player has 45 minutes. So because we don't really want games ending with someone timing out. That's not the spirit of Legacy. We want to see the coolest interactions. We want to see 40 turn game ones between Death and Taxes and Landstill.
Or how about 40 turn Death and Taxes mirrors? Eh?
Nah.
Eh? That's probably coming.
I'd rather mow my lawn.
You could probably make like 700 goblins in the time it takes us to like play that mirror.
The most I've ever stormed for, I believe, is like 63. And Jody takes game 1.
All right, so out of the sideboard, why don't we start with Julian here? We'll probably see some amount of discard coming in just to take care of otherwise problematic cards like Supreme Verdict and Clear the Way. But I don't know that he's actually going to sideboard too many cards other than discard for this matchup. Like, the natural orders probably come out because they're relatively weak against counterspells, and he can just, like, play a fair game. So I expect to see, like, natural orders out and, like, I guess the Rec Sage out, because that actually doesn't answer humility like you want it to. And then a bunch of discard in. Oh, I guess we can see his screen now. So he has opted to bring in Pithing Needle and Abrupt Decay as well. Then over on...
So what do you think the best Pithing Needle target is? Excuse me.
Engineered Explosives. That is certainly the most impactful target. Although there may be situations where he is just forced to go and put it on the factory so it doesn't beat him down or just like stonewall the elf aggro plan.
So we are seeing that Julian is not siding in Lost Legacy. Why is that?
So, like, what would you want to name with Lost Legacy enough to actually cast it? And, like, Supreme Verdict? I don't know that there's anything. Whereas over on the other side, Jody Keith's sideboarding makes a lot of sense to me. Bring in more sweepers, bring in Containment Priest so that Green Sun Zenith and Natural Order are much less meaningful. The Priest loses some value since, like, Julian is very obviously going to side out the Natural Orders, but it's still very good against Zenith.
I like the 2 Containment Priests coming in from Jody.
Yeah, and, like, I know this is obvious to say, but the fact that it has Flash is just so stellar, because even if you're not going and getting rid of, you know, a Green Sun Zenith on the stack, you can just use it as Ambush Viper to take down a Heritage Druid or a Dryad Arbor that's attacking. The Council's judgment that's coming in on Jody's side is likely due to the fact that he does not know Julian's deck list, and he does not know whether or not Julian is playing another target out of the sideboard, like Progenitus or Silly Worm that I keep forgetting the name of, that otherwise...
Elder Scale
Worm, that might otherwise be difficult to answer.
So we can't see the 7th card in Jody's hand, but if it's a fetch land, I kind of like this hand.
I love that hand if the last card is a fetch land.
Ooh, it is not a fetch land. It is everyone's favorite enchantment.
Ooh. That probably needs to be a mulligan. Like, despite the fact that it has Kozilek's Return, which is just, like, unquestionably amazing, that's just way too risky of a hand, and Elves will get so far ahead of you if you give them a turn or two where you're not doing something to check them. So, oh, man.
I don't know if I actually love Jace against Elves. I feel like it's a little slow, and the fear of tapping out scares me.
I agree with that assessment, but I don't know how Jody's in-out numbers were working, and it might be that even though Jace isn't the most amazing thing, it might be just better than other options.
That's fair.
That's something I've noticed a lot when like switching around and playing other decks. I like in a vacuum, I say, oh, that card's terrible against D&T. And then I'll play the other side of the matchup, and I'm like, no, but all these other cards are worse. I see why it's staying in. I imagine we're in one of those situations.
Ooh, the second E is very good here.
Yeah, that was scried to the top, and it's just absolutely disgusting. So the question now is like whether or not he's just going to like ram one out there on 1 now so he can crack it next turn, or whether or not he wants to ponder and try to set up for future turns. I like just ramming it out there because like something like a Rex Sage can't just naturally answer it yet at this early stage of a game.
Crater Huff Behemoth, not a great draw.
It's a scumbag. It just like naturally levitates towards your hand whenever you're playing it.
I imagine it's very similar to playing Ant and drawing your Tendrils of Agony. It's just like the last card you want to draw.
So it's the
We'll
Batter
see
Skull
Jody pick up
from
a
D&D.
Forcible here. I think I'm okay with that as a draw.
Yeah, that's a good safety net. And I expect Jody to just like never mind. He is accepting the 1-for-1 of EE here to get the Wirewood off the table. Oh, gosh.
Wow, that is unfortunate.
That is rough.
So, are we going to see Julian's next list featuring Brainstorm?
All right, guys. So here's the plan. We brainstorm back the Crater Hoof, and then we natural order.
I believe that Etched Oracle, or not Etched Oracle, Coiling Oracle is a blue elf.
We also have Leovold. We can go bug Elves.
I thought we were talking about playable cards. So chat previously mentioned that they liked Jace because it was a way for Jody to pull ahead. So do you think that Jace is required, and or maybe you could board out Standstill? Like in this matchup, what would you rather have, Standstills or Jace?
That's tricky. Both are bad if your opponent already has a board. So they're kind of functioning in similar ways, but Jace is better against like just one lone creature on the board. Say Julian just has like a Scavenging Ooze or something like that he's pecking the opponent with. Jace can kind of keep that at parity while he digs for some way to deal with the remaining creature. Whereas Standstill absolutely has to be played on an empty board or very close to it.
So we're going to see a Ponder, and if I was Jody, I'd be shuffling this. The Mishra's Factory is fine, but the other two cards just aren't what I want. And because of the fact that Jody doesn't have a fetch land...
I don't know. I would want to keep that, and I'd want to jam Standstill this turn. Like, when you have Factory, that will beat the Dryad Arbor plus Pendelhaven. So the next turn you get to draw a blue card to pair with your Force of Will. So I think that's actually fine. Like, yes, the Spell Pierce isn't good, but since it pairs with Force, you can just sit there for a while. And Jody also doesn't know that Julian's hand is complete doo-doo and has double Crater Hoof. So he might actually be somewhat afraid of Julian.
Are the Yoshis doing the doo-doo? Is that what those are representations of?
I think they're like weird egg pants.
Hmm. All right, so taking a second to think about our options, and Julian will not cast anything.
So I'm trying to like conceptually think of like what Julian is going to be looking for here. He's probably not getting the 8 mana to hard cast those Crater Hooks like without casting more threats. So that's not really an option. So maybe he waits for a glimpse before going off. Tossies is nice.
Pretty good draw. I love that Containment Priest that Jody picked up on the previous turn.
Yeah, that's... The Ambush Viper mode is less good with the Pendelhaven sitting around, but the ability to shut off Green Sun, which might be one of Julian's best cards otherwise.
So going back to Julian having the Central Perk logo, as a baseball fan, one of the players on the New York Mets is a huge fan of Friends, and he said that it's how he learned English when he was moving to the United States. And I found out since then a lot of Europeans love Friends because it got to them later in time. So it's just like a weird, funny thing to me that Julian just happens to be European and has Central Perk as his logo.
So I'm a language teacher myself, and it always like warms my heart when I hear things like that. Like, oh man, I wanted to pick up another language, so I just like went and watched TV in a different language, and I learned it. Like that's just like so cool to me. The staring game continues.
Ooh, the Kozilek's return.
Oh, I don't know how much longer Julian can wait. Like his hand is starting to look pretty good. Like he can like just lead on something stupid like an Elvish Visionary if he wants just to crack it, and then Thoughtseize afterwards. And then after that, still Glimpse and maybe Glimpse Chain and go off.
So from Julian's side of the table, what I like is that Jody doesn't have a whole lot of counter spells. Like he has a Force of Will. So if Julian leads off on the Thoughtseize and hits the Force, he might be able to Glimpse Chain through the Kozilek's return.
That's maybe not unreasonable.
I mean, it's going to be difficult, but it might be possible.
Or at least like generate enough value so that the Kozilek's return isn't as backbreaking as it otherwise might be.
And we're seeing Jody end-step Brainstorm in order to break his own standstill. So Julian gets to sculpt his hand into the perfect 7.
So double discard spells actually pretty nice, because that will probably with certainty clear the way.
So chat just brought up an interesting point that Julian has discarded both of his Crater Huffs. So at this point, it's Elves beating for the rest of the game.
So that
wouldn't you love a Shaman of the Pack here?
I mean, I would love to have another just big dumb idiot in the deck, but Shaman of the Pack might be better just like with the Wirewood Symbiote synergy, especially in this sort of long grindy matchup.
Julian's going to watch this later and be so upset with me, and I'm just not going to get to do commentary anymore.
Well, one and done. At least it was an interesting one.
I got the shout out for Mastrop Parted Hair. I talked about Friends. I'd like to take an opportunity to talk about Scumbag Bob Huang. He knows that he knew that we were in the same group for next week and metagamed against me. So I'm hoping that we are not paired.
Yeah, well, I was hoping not to be paired against Julian, and we saw how that worked.
And we did talk about Wilmer Flores, the New York Metropolitan.
All right, so now Jody has his Containment Priest in play, along with the Mishra's Factory. He can start getting aggressive and start attacking Julian's life total and put him on a real clock. Although, honestly, we might just see, like, attack for 4, deploy second standstill.
So a question for you.
Shoot.
Do you like playing out the Containment Priest to start your clock when you're holding a Kozilek's return?
I don't love it. But if his plan is, like, deploy another standstill anyway, then it doesn't really matter if he throws away the Containment Priest as a card. Like, he's got 2 Wraths. If he plays another standstill, that's 3 more cards coming down the pipe. You know, potentially 6 more cards now that he has the 3rd standstill. So the fact that the Containment Priest dies in the Crossfire, that doesn't matter, right? If that Containment Priest gets to hit for 4 points of damage, that's probably worth a card.
Fair enough. And I guess if Julian's Critter Huff Behemoths are gone, the fear of Green Sun and Natural Order aren't great. We're seeing that Jace come down now.
is interesting. Like, I don't disagree with it. But what does he do with that? Like, you don't really want to Fate Seal Julian because he has double fetch up. You don't really
Brainstorm for value?
Yeah, I guess. Like, the Jace isn't going to be how you, like, physically win the game. In all likelihood, it's with damage from that factory.
I like the lane tutor here.
Yeah, Enlightened Tutor can get humility and kind of lock things up.
Could also get the second explosives. Ooh, it's looking like Jody's thinking about putting back the K return.
What?
Feeling frisky.
That is such a good safety net. I don't know that I agree with that play. Not dropping the standstill either.
Well, according to Dr. Yu, Jody has a extended top 8 with blue-white control, so it doesn't seem like he's inexperienced with the archetype, so maybe he's decided at this point in the game that he is the aggro, and he doesn't want to be holding on to defensive cards.
Okay, you know what? I've reconsidered my position on that. If he is not intending on using the Enlightened Tutor to shuffle away this turn, then putting the K return on top is actually just hiding it from discard. That might be the intention there, rather than intending to shuffle it away.
That could be true.
I think I was too hasty in my guffaw.
Do you think that Julian takes the standstills with the Cabal Therapy?
So if he takes the Force of Will, he can then cast Cabal Therapy. If his opponent doesn't brainstorm, he names Brainstorm. If his opponent brainstorms, he names Force of Will, and then try to glimpse Shane. No, both Crater Hoops are gone, so he can't actually get the win this turn. Ooh, okay. So he did it backwards. He took the Brainstorm first so that he could Cabal Therapy.
I think we'll see him take the Force of Will here, and then try to glimpse off. I really hope that Julian has some sort of cool trick to pull out of his ass in order to win this game. Force of Will, how lucky. I think Julian's probably ghosting.
So at this point, when Julian is making videos, he usually throws on some catchy music and just kind of goes to the races. We gave kind of a ba-dum 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 bum ba-dum 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 bum bum thing for a couple of minutes while he does his thing.
Ooh, the Nettle Sentinel here was an amazing draw.
Nettle Sentinel is pretty sweet with both Birchlore Rangers and Heritage Druid. So with double Nettle Sentinel, that means any one drop from here is just actually free. It costs
Has
nothing.
Julian played a land yet?
I do not believe so, but I cannot 100% confirm. So we're going to see him drawing a whole bunch of cards, both from like the triggers themselves and from these Elvish Visionaries.
I believe we saw Julian side in Surgical Extraction, so if he wants the heads-up play, he might actually Surgical Jody in order to get the Wraths off the top of the deck, but that would require some foresight from Julian thinking that Jody would be hiding Wraths.
And that was something that we initially missed, but I think that Julian, as someone playing this deck, probably would have picked up on that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of thing is on his radar. You know, I think he only sideboarded in one Surgical, right? So,
ooh, the Pithy Needle is a great draw there. So what that does is it shuts off Engineered Explosives as an out for Enlightened Tutor.
So he actually doesn't have another EE, right? Because he used 2 in the initial turns of the game.
Both. Oh, wow.
But Julian maybe does not know that he only has 2.
So, fun fact for you, Phil. My first ever top 8 of a Magic tournament was with Landstill.
Ooh, that is neat, and there's that surgical.
It was during the days of 1.5. I could not afford mana drain, so I ran counter target spell.
I mean, I've played some pretty shameful budget lists myself. My first events with like D and T did not have Caracas. They ran like 4 pieces of equipment and like Legacy All-Stars, like Student of Warfare.
So,
it was rough.
If you're Julian, what do you surgical here? You could hit Standstill and get a 3-for-1, but is that actually any good?
So, essentially all Julian needs to do is not get Wrathed in the next turn, and he probably will be able to win. So that might incentivize him to actually surgical something like Ponder. Julian also does have Cabal Therapy in the graveyard, so he can sacrifice 1 random elf at the tail end of this to take out both standstills.
And Julian still hasn't played a land, I don't believe, so he could still search up, unless he only has 2 Bayou, another black source and cast the other Cabal Therapy.
Well, that's not even an issue, right? He has Birchfloor Rangers, so that can just make the black.
You are correct.
So we will probably see Jody Keith start his next turn minus some or all of the cards in his hand. And
how funny would it be if Julian accidentally decked? He's down to 12 cards. So we might actually see something come up that was discussed during the Death and Taxes matchup of Standstill, break my own Standstill, make you draw 3.
Ooh.
How savage would that be?
That would be pretty savage. But I don't think like he's going to have those standstills in hand next turn.
So he needs to do 14 damage through 2 blockers.
And a Jace.
It might be tough. I think he's more likely to deck at this point. I don't believe that Glimpse is a May. I think it's a you must draw.
That is correct.
So at this point, the question is, can you get 14 power in a play without decking?
So we might see Snapcaster Mage just put into play here so that it does not get thought seized and so that he produces 1 more body. Nope.
Ooh. If I'm Jody here, I am not casting Enlightened Tutor.
Well, he doesn't have anything to Enlightened Tutor that matters.
So Pithing Needle can name Jace here. And Factory. The question is, does Julian have another surgical? I can't tell because it's off screen, part of his hand, but we see that the first needle named Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Second needle seems sweet.
And I don't think that Julian can actually afford to sacrifice a creature here to Cabal Therapy. I'm naming Mishra's Factory with this needle. Let's see if Julian does the same.
Knowing the deck list, I think it's very easy to say Mishra's Factory, but like he may fear a 3rd EE, and that would just be like probably literally unbeatable. So there might be a world where he just has to name that, because the EE would also sweep the needles off in addition to all the critters, minus Elvish Visionaries. Julian's thinking about it.
So Wilson Hunter has joined the chat, everyone. The owner and creator of Cardboard.live. Everyone say hi to Wilson.
Hi, Wilson. I borrowed the cards for your Sweet Grixis control list. I'm going to play around with that tomorrow at some point. Looks fun.
I will apologize for Wilson because that deck is terrible. Do not play it.
I'm playing it, and I hope to find out that it's terrible, and then tell the world so that everyone stops playing K-Command. That'd be great.
I don't know if you listened to the Leaving a Legacy podcast that I was on, but I said that I thought Death and Taxes was one of the biggest winners because of K-Command leaving the format.
My win percentage has shot up since the ban. It's absurd how easy things are now. I feel favored in almost all of the games that I sit down in now. You know, Julian mopped the floor with me, obviously. There's very little that I can do there. But sans, like, Elves, there are very few, like, tier 1 or close to tier 1 matchups that I don't want to see.
So, okay. So now if you're Julian, do you just snap surgical something in order to shuffle? I think you have to.
I think it's necessary. Someone in the chat a little while ago suggested just like surgical EE, and then you don't have to name that with pithing needle, and then you can name factory instead.
I like that. Chat is very good at Magic.
The hive mind is strong sometimes.
Oh no! Are we going to see the surgical?
Oh god!
Oh no!
Oh
Okay,
no! I can't
do it.
I was really voting for Julian here. I don't want him with a loser.
I want to see a game 3.
Surgical targeting Snapcaster.
Wow, BFG in the chat is talking lots of shit. Not only does he beat me all the time on Moto, now he's going to insult me. Some people.
Oh man, someone insulted someone else on the internet. Oh no. Not my feelings.
It looks like there's still 3 sweepers. So, and he has some cantrips, so he's not dead in the water yet. Like, he does have a lot of live draws. The Gooch is here. We have legacy videos for him.
Oh man, I love the legacy videos. That's like what I do on my lunch hours when all the children leave. It's great. I'm a teacher. You're looking at me funny.
I think that Julian's list probably could have used a grape shot this game. I believe that the PT, the LSV won, it won with grape shot most of the games.
So,
is this actually even lethal? I haven't counted it up yet.
I haven't counted either. The fact that he's not blocking both wirewoods makes me guess that it's lethal, but I don't know that I like the blocks the way they're at now, right? Because the factory can block a 3-3 and survive, or a 2-2 and survive by pumping itself into a 3-3. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to trade.
It's currently not 14, so it looks like...
Sentinel.
I mean, Julian hasn't decked yet. He can always attack again next turn. Chad is now teaching me what LSV used. It was Grape Shot, but they also used Predator, Dragon, and Banefire.
Uh-huh. Okay, so...
I'm really impressed with how Julian has turned this game around.
Very. I'm just trying to think about Jody's block there. I wonder if his thought is, I'm dead if I don't find a sweeper, so throwing away the Containment Priest literally does not matter.
I think also most of the best tutor targets are gone at this point, so like the Priest really doesn't matter. But if I'm Julian, I'm not extending any more to the board.
Yeah. What is he therapy? Like what would Jody have that he did not cast? Okay, Forcible. Makes sense.
So Phil, predictions for this weekend's Pro Tour. What do you think the champion of the Pro Tour's legacy deck will be?
Honestly, I feel very good about Death and Tax's position as a deck. Like, I know obviously I'm biased, but I think D&T is one of the best decks in the format. So I'd say that's one deck to
Julian
watch.
wins. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no worries. But I don't know that a lot of pros who don't already have experience playing D&T would actually levitate towards D&T. So I would not be surprised to see a deck like Miracles just kind of be very popular at the top end tables. It's consistent. It has cantrips. It's similar to versions of the deck that have existed in the past. I think Miracles is probably a safe bet for a deck that would be very, very popular.
To quote our sponsor, Wilson Hunter, I think Miracles is actually kind of bad. And in Wilson's word, it sucks. I think that with Death and Taxes being super popular, like Miracles players love to claim they have a very good Death and Taxes matchup. I don't think that's actually the case. I think it's a lot closer than what they're willing to say it is. And it has a miserable Sneak and Show matchup, which is what I think will win the Pro Tour. I think a lot of pros are just planning on jamming Show and Tell and hoping that it's good enough.
So the Miracles is actually favored against D&T now. The data has changed a lot after the banning of Sensei's Divining Top, because oddly enough, that made the deck worse against us, because it meant that Revoker could cripple a lot of their early game progression and you could just get a ton of free wins, and that doesn't exist anymore. So the deck has just felt far less beatable now that they're playing like Predicts and Portents, because that smooths out the early game, and when they make it to the late game and it's just like Terminus you, Snapcaster, Swords you, it's actually felt very miserable, and my data is suggesting that they're favored by more than 10%.
Okay. Another question for you, Phil. Is there a team that you think is likely going to win? Like, are there any teams that you're a big fan of?
To be honest, I basically only watch Legacy content, so I don't actually know who the teams are going into this. So I will abstain from picking here. What about you?
So I play all formats, despite what people think. Like, I even dabble a little bit in Limited. I actually really love Modern, and Standard is fine. But I'm not really big into following pros. So if I had to hedge my bets, I think that Peach Garden Oath is obviously a big favorite. They're just like three of the best players that are currently playing the game. So I'd probably pick them. And I imagine that Reed would be on Miracles.
It's so hard to like pick a team for a team event like that, though, because like even if like you have this like crazy good team at the Pro Tour level, you have three sets of decks mashing up against each other, and sometimes you hit some rough pairings, and like you have to hope that your teammates can win through those. In the team events I've played, like sometimes I got paired against Elves and Belcher, and like 30 seconds into the round, I'm like, all right, you two need to win this. Focus on your matches. Ignore me. I'll help you if you need it.
So round one of Worcester, Mass, I lost to Burn, and my teammates carried me that round. And then I didn't lose the rest of the day. So like sometimes that's all you need is your teammates to get you through that one bad round.
And like, I don't want to beat the dead horse too much, but like that's another reason why D&T is great right now, right? Like if your teammates can carry you through the random bad, actually unwinnable matchups that you're going to face, and you just get paired against things like Rug Delver and Miracles all day, you will maybe not Miracles. You get paired against things like Rug Delver and Loam and a lot of the other popular decks of the moment. You're going to do really well.
What's the name of this Cabal Therapy?
I feel like it's Force of Will, because he has this glimpse in hand.
I think that Jody actually has a very strong, diverse hand.
The brainstorm game here is going to be very interesting.
Ooh, I don't like drawing another Force Will there. I wonder what the third card is.
That's difficult.
Well, you were talking about how your win percentage has skyrocketed since the banning. I initially started off very hot. I was running around like 73, 74%. And I've hit the worst losing streak in recent memory, and I am all the way down to like 56%.
Oh, geez.
I've just been lighting tickets on fire.
Yeah, so in a normal format where D&T is kind of neutral, I'm usually sitting at about 66. Through most of the Culligan's Command era, I was sitting between 60 and 63, and now I'm usually sitting at about 69 or 70.
That's very good.
Yeah.
When I'm running hot, I think I tend to sit around like 67%.
I've been doing very well. I also played a lot of matches with Eldrazi, and I started off just crazy hot with that deck. I was sitting at about 80% win percentage, and then I bombed out of 2 or 3 leagues in a row with Eldrazi, and I put that down.
Wise move.
All right. It begins.
Oh, we're going for it. I'm a little shocked by this.
I'm sorry, did that just resolve?
I thought we were going to go off next turn, but apparently it's go time.
So this is just turn 2, so he's already played a land. So that's just a cantrip, right?
Yeah.
That does not have the potential to go off in any capacity.
A little shocked by this. Julian probably knows more about his deck than we do, so I'm not going to judge him based on this, but I thought for sure he would have went for next turn.
So maybe the plan was just to turn it into an Elvish Visionary and then use it to therapy something so that he can still have a mana dork in play, but he's also attacked the hand further without getting behind on board.
If there was an advantage bar, what way would it be pointing for you?
Well, Julian just drew another glimpse.
I mean, to counter that, literally, Jody has 3 counter spells in his hand. To me, this is a dead even 50-50 match right now.
So I think Julian will probably try to play this in a way where he exposes a few cards to counter spells over... Oh.
Again, wow. No fear. If you're Jody, do you counter that? I guess not.
These glimpses have been so much more aggressive than I've ever played glimpse before. Like, I've only
just
played
mono green storm.
Yeah, I've only played elves at like my local legacy events, like little 3 or 4 round things. So I won't claim to really know what I'm doing. But like clearly Julian does, because like drawing those wirewoods off the top means that he was able to really continue his chain.
This is amazing.
And like now he gets the Nettle Sentinel and he has Birch Lore.
That worked out very well for him. And Storm up to 8. I'm very impressed. Wow. Supreme Verdict.
Oh boy.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
So like the verdict is only medium though, right? Like it gets 2 creatures. So like Julian gets to bounce 2 elves back to his hand, and he doesn't actually end up all that far behind. So like although the Supreme Verdict looks great, because the glimpse wasn't countered, the Supreme Verdict is essentially just mopping up glimpse stuff.
Well, that's true. I think it opens up the game so that a Snapcaster Supreme Verdict later on can win it. Agreed. Like getting effects like Wirewood Symbiote out of the way end up mattering a lot.
All right, I like this. We have played a 2/2 beater. Fortunately, that's not going to go so great into the double flash creature that we have here.
A couple of years ago, I was playing at an open, and for some reason, I thought it was the morph that I can't think of the name of it, but when you unmorph it, all your elves get +2/+2 and trample. So I had a ton of Empty the Warrens tokens, and I ended up leaving some of them back because I was so terrified of the trample damage killing me.
Yes.
The card I'm talking about is from Legions, and it has like a very orangish art. I just can't think of the name.
I think it's Tribal something. Chat says Tribal Force Mage.
That would be the one. When I was first getting into tournament Magic, I bought so many boxes of Onslaught and Legions. Like I started around Invasion 7th in that area, but I didn't really like play competitively. When I started going to tournaments, I couldn't get enough of Onslaught block. Like I liked it so much that I even tried reading some of the books that were fairly poor, but off topic.
I've never gone that deep into the lore. And I started very late relative to a lot of other players. I started with Scars, so I'm a baby.
I usually put Magic players into two different categories. And despite me trying to read the books, I am not one of those people, but I describe it as people that are very, very competitive, and this is their competitive outlet, or they like dragons.
It's very accurate. I like that. Dragons being, an umbrella term for any specific tribe. Because I know so many people who are just like nuts over arts of angels, for example, and they have a binder full of angels.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with being someone that likes dragons. Like, people play this game for so many different reasons, but I think it's very easy to put people into those two camps.
Yeah. I have met so many wonderful people just like hanging out on like the trade floor at opens and such who just like want to show me the cool things that they're doing with Magic that are just things that I would never ever consider doing. And the people enjoy Magic in very different ways. I'm not the kind of person who can sit down and play Commander for an entire evening and have a bunch of fun, but I have a bunch of buddies who sit down with a bunch of beer and do just that, and they're thrilled.
Yeah. So during opens and other large events, I try to not play or even think about Magic in between rounds. Like, I try to rest my brain and like get a little more relaxed and like less mental fatigue. So that's usually the time in which people would play something like EDH or Commander. Ooh, this E on 1 is very good.
It's insane because not only does it wipe the creatures, it also gets rid of the Pithing Needle that turns Factory back on both as a blocker and as an attacker.
I used my Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster a little too early.
So Julian is in a pretty tight spot now. I don't want to count him out because he's very much shown the capabilities of the Elves deck this game. But humility is a bit of a beating.
I don't think that Julian has anything like Crossing Grip out of the sideboard in order to deal with humility.
Yeah, he has Abrupt Decays in his sideboard, but obviously that doesn't work, and he didn't bring them in as well.
The Verdict here also very strong. I think we're going to see Jody being the 2-0 for this pod.
I didn't expect that. I expected Julian to go through and get this pod. Now he'll have to plow through all the D&T in the losers bracket. Oh no.
I mean, we both thought that Julian was slightly favored. Jody Keith proving us wrong. Very strong player, and he played well. This game isn't over yet. These are just predictions.
So there are some people in chat talking about, what's a good win percentage? What do you think? What should someone strive to have?
So I know that Bob Huang won't play a deck unless it's 70%, and I feel like that's skewed because when you look back at the last 4 to 5 years, the decks that were 70% were Miracles, Grixis Delver. Those are all decks that got things banned. So I think if you want to play a reasonable deck with a good win percentage, 65% is generally like a good deck where you'll need a pretty above average day in order to top 8, but with a deck around those win percentage, you can do it. I think if you're sitting at like 55%, you're probably looking at an average day too. But it all depends on how you run that specific day.
So I like to think of it in terms of moto. If you can go 3-2, that is 60%, you're probably breaking even or better. So if you're kind of a newer player, I'd say if you can aim for 60% and you can get there, that's a great starting point. But don't be happy with that and keep trying to make personal progress and figure out what you're doing wrong to tick those numbers up.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in always striving in order to do better. Like, self-improvement is something that you should just never stop aiming for. All right, so we're seeing Jody starting to get in there. That was 3 points of damage.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to just see Containment Priest as a random end-step hate bear to just, well, not even hate bear, end-step flash 1/1 to just increase the clock. Like, now he can crash in for 5 a turn. It's a 3-turn clock. You know,
it's not looking good for Mono Green Storm.
It is not. So Julian can chain together a lot of stuff here. Like, he can go Visionary. Oh, now Versatile Rangers is shut off. Humility, so strong. Counterspell to 1/1. Play another 1/1.
Theo, of course I will be your life coach.
And for those actual Storm players out there, you do actually do some real coaching on your free time as well, right?
I do. I'm coaching a couple people for the Pro Tour right now, which is pretty exciting, despite me not being good enough to qualify, even though I tried. I played in a lot of Grand Prix this year. My fiance wishes I was home a little bit more, but I think it was worth it to try to qualify for PT25. And that's it. Jody Keith, 2-0, pod winner.
All righty. Well, congratulations to him. So,
yeah, definitely.
Momentarily, before we kind of move on to our next thing here, we are going to have a wonderful giveaway.
Is this where we spam Card Hoarder in the chat?
This is where we spam Card Hoarder in the chat, but wait till you have the notification from Ogre Voltage to go ahead and get things started.
Looks like Carnage was too soon. They are disqualified. Also, if you play Ant, you are disqualified.
All right, you now may begin. Go ahead and type Card Hoarder into the chat to enter yourself into this giveaway. So this is sponsored by one of our sponsors, Card Hoarder. They've